Good morning, dear students. Today we will revise Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is Microorganisms, Friend and Foe. So let's start. I'm starting with MCQs. First is, which of the following microorganisms can make their own food by the process of photosynthesis? So here answer is algae. Algae are the photosynthetic organisms that can make their own food. Next is microorganism, which is largely used in bakeries and breweries. Here answer is yeast. Yeast is a type of fungus. It is used in the bakeries and breweries. We'll discuss it in detail when I will discuss long question answers. Sleeping sickness, it is caused by. Sleeping sickness is a disease. It is caused by protozoa. Which of the following is not a food preservative? So here answer is water, because remaining all salt, sugar and vinegar, they are used for preserving the food items, for different type of food items. So here answer is water. Water is not a food preservative. Next is pasteurization is a method of preserving milk. Pasteurization is a method that is used to preserve milk. In this method, the milk is heated to 70 degrees Celsius for 15 to 20 seconds and then suddenly it is chilled and stored. Next are the Phillips. Amoebic dysentery, it is caused by a protozoa called Ant-Amoeba histolytica. It is this disease, it is usually caused by consuming contaminated food and water. Next is dash is the bacteria living in the root nodules of plants. Rhizobium bacteria. Rhizobium bacteria have the ability to fix nitrogen. Next is dash is the microorganism used for making curd. Curd contains lactobacillus bacteria, which helps in making curd. Dash is a poisonous mushroom. Amanita is a poisonous mushroom. Chemicals used to check microbial growth in the food is known as preservatives. So the chemical preservatives, they are used to preserve food items. We'll discuss it in detail when I will discuss long answer type questions. Match the following. First is polio. Polio is caused by the poliovirus. Azotobacter. Azotobacter bacteria have the capability to convert nitrogen into the useful compounds that can be used by the plants, or we can say Azotobacter bacteria have the capability to fix nitrogen. Next is streptomycin. Streptomycin is an antibiotic. Fungi. Yeast is a type of fungi. Spirogyra. Spirogyra is a type of green algae. Next is Aedes. Aedes mosquitoes are the carrier of dengue virus. Now starting with a short answer type question. So the first question is, how does a vaccine work? When disease causing microbes enters our body in response to that produces antibodies so as to fight with those microbes and kill them. And these antibiotics once formed remains in our body, and our body remembers how to fight with these microbes if it enters again. So in case of the vaccine, dead or weakened disease-causing microbes are given orally. Orally means by a mouth, or injected in the body. So our body assumes that any disease-causing microbe has entered. So our body reacts to that by producing the antibodies. And these antibodies, once produced, will remain in our body and they protect us from the future infection. So this is how a vaccine works. Next is, how do microorganisms, they help us in cleaning the environment. Some microorganisms like bacteria and fungi, they feed on dead and decaying plant and animal matter and convert that into the simple organic substances that can be used by the plants. And these simple organic substances, they increase the fertility of the soil. So like this, microorganisms, they are feeding on this dead and decaying matter and converting that into the humus, or we can say the simple organic substances that increase the fertility of the soil. Which is useful for the plants, and by feeding on the dead and decaying matter, they are cleaning the environment. Next is, what measures must be taken to reduce the incidence of malaria and dengue? First, we need to understand how these diseases spread. Mosquitoes, they just spread these diseases, but these are caused by the microorganisms. Like Anopheles mosquito is the carrier of malaria parasite, and the Aedes mosquito is the carrier of dengue virus. Okay, And we know that mosquitoes breed in water. So how we can prevent these diseases from spreading? By destroying the breeding places of these mosquitoes. So we should not let collect water anywhere in the tires, ports, etc. And we should use mosquito nets. We should spread the insecticides. Okay, and we should use the we should use mosquito repellents, etc. So like this we can prevent the incidence of these diseases. Next is write a note on the nitrogen fixation. This we will discuss. Next is write a short note on nitrogen fixation. We know that in the atmosphere 78% is nitrogen gas. But the nitrogen gas present in the atmosphere, it cannot be directly utilized by plants and animals. It needs to be converted into usable form so as to utilize it. So some bacteria present in the soil, they have the capability to convert atmospheric nitrogen into the nitrogenous compounds that are useful, that can be utilized by the plants. So the process of conversion of the atmospheric nitrogen in some useful forms is nitrogen fixation. And this process can take place by the various ways, like nitrogen fixation by rhizobium bacteria that remains in the root nodules of the leguminous plants, and nitrogen fixation by blue-green algae, nitrogen fixation by lightning. Rest, we will discuss this nitrogen fixation in detail in long answer type questions. Next is long answer type questions. What are the various methods used for food preservation? If we do not preserve our food items, there are the chances that they may get spoiled by the microorganisms. Microorganisms spoil the food items by growing over them. When the microorganisms grow over the food items, they release some toxic substances in them and spoil the food items. Spoiled food, the food item spoiled by the microorganisms emits bad smell. It has bad taste. And if these food items that have been spoiled by the microorganisms, if these are consumed, it results in the serious illness. So we need to preserve our food items to keep it fresh for a longer time and so as to protect it from the microorganisms. So how we can do that? This can be done by various methods. So let's discuss about them in detail one by one. First is the refrigeration. This is the most common method used for preserving the food items at home. Refrigeration, we keep the food items in the refrigerator, which keeps our food items fresh. Because inside the refrigerator there is low temperature, and the low temperature inhibits the growth of the microorganisms. Next is preservation by common salt. Common salt also acts as a preservative for preserving the food items like meat, raw amla, etc. Next is preservation by sugar. Sugar, it reduces the moisture content and prevents the growth of the microorganisms. So the jams, jellies, they are preserved with the help of sugar, because it reduces the content of moisture and prevents the growth of the microorganisms. Next is preservation by oil and vinegar. Oil and vinegar, they are used for protecting various vegetables, fruits, pickles, etc. because the microorganisms, they cannot survive in such type of environment like in oil. Next is pasteurization. Pasteurization, this is a method which is used for preserving milk. What happens in this? The milk is heated to 70 degrees for 15 to 20 seconds, and then suddenly it is chilled and then it is stored. Next is the boiling. Boiling, it kills microorganisms present in the food items. You might have seen at our home also, before storing the milk, first it is boiled, because boiling, it kills the microorganisms present in the milk. Next is chemical preservatives. Chemical preservatives means the chemicals which prevent the growth of the microorganisms. These chemicals, they usually act as the antioxidants. They remove the oxygen from the food items, which prevents the growth of the microbes. They are usually used to preserve food items like ketchups, pickles, murabbas, etc. If we talk about the examples, sodium benzoate, sodium metabisulfate, these are some examples of the chemical preservatives. Next question is, what are the various steps of nitrogen cycle? The amount of nitrogen it is maintained in the atmosphere due to nitrogen cycle. If we talk about the amount of nitrogen gas in the atmosphere, it is 78%. Nitrogen is the most abundant gas present in the atmosphere. But it cannot be utilized directly by plants and animals. It needs to be converted to some usable form. Okay. So the nitrogen, for the first step of the nitrogen cycle is the nitrogen fixation. What is the meaning of nitrogen fixation? The atmospheric nitrogen, it is a process by which atmospheric nitrogen it is converted into useful nitrogenous compounds. So this is nitrogen fixation. It can happen by the different ways, like by rhizobium bacteria, by blue-green algae, by lightning. So by all these methods, by any of these methods, what happens? The atmospheric nitrogen it is converted into useful nitrogenous compounds, which can be used by the plants. After that, the next step is absorption of nitrates by plants. As I told you that by these methods, by the nitrogen fixation, nitrogen present in the atmosphere it is converted into the useful nitrogenous compounds like nitrates. After that, what happens? The plants, they absorb the nitrates from the soil through their roots. After the absorption of the nitrates by the plants convert these nitrates into the proteins. And when animals eat these plants or the plants' products, they get proteins and other nitrogenous compounds. After that, the next step is ammonification. When these plants or the animals they die, so the proteins from the dead plant and animal matter it is converted into ammonia by the ammonifying bacteria. The next step is ammonification. What happens in this? Protein from the dead plant and animal matter it is converted into ammonia by ammonifying bacteria. Okay. So what is the next step? After this, now the next step is nitrification. In this step, we have got protein from protein from dead and decaying plant and animal matter, it has got converted into ammonia. Next step is nitrification. In this, the ammonia, it is converted into nitrites and nitrates by nitrifying bacteria. Okay, so now what we have got? We have got the nitrates again. Some of the nitrates, they are absorbed by the plants, okay, as this is a cycle. So some of the nitrates are again absorbed by the plants from the soil through their root. And some of the nitrates, they get converted into the atmospheric nitrogen by denitrifying bacteria. In the soil, there are denitrifying bacteria also remain present, which converts the nitrates present in the soil into the atmospheric nitrogen. So like this, balance of nitrogen, it is maintained in the atmosphere. I hope all these steps are clear. Now moving on to the next question. What are communicable diseases and how are they spread? Communicable diseases means the diseases which can spread from an infected person to a healthy person through air, water, food or physical contact. Now how these communicable diseases they spread? For example, it may spread through the insects, mosquitoes, they act as the carriers of the disease-causing microbes. For example, Anopheles mosquitoes are the carrier of malaria parasite. Aedes mosquitoes, they are the carriers of dengue virus. So these insects or the mosquitoes, they act as the carriers of these diseases and spread the disease from an infected person to a healthy person. And these communication diseases, they also spread through physical contact with the infected person. So the communicable diseases, they spread either through physical contact with the infected person or through air, or it also spread due to the carriers of these viruses or the microbes. Next is, why do we use yeast in the bakeries and breweries? Yeast is used in the bakeries for the making cakes, pastries, etc. And the yeast is also used for the production of the breweries like alcohol, wine, etc. Yeast undergoes anaerobic respiration, which is also called fermentation. So during the process of the fermentation, yeast, it converts the glucose into alcohol and carbon dioxide. So the bubbles of this gas, carbon dioxide, it fills the dough and increases the volume of that. Or we can say it makes the dough fluffy. So because of this, yeast is used in the manufacturing of idli, pastries, cakes, etc. And yeast is also used for producing alcohol wine on a commercial scale, because yeast, it converts glucose into the alcohol and produces carbon dioxide. So dear students, this chapter 2, it is a lengthy chapter. In the back exercise, there are less questions. So that's why I have given you extra question answers also. And other than also, there can be many internal questions can be made from this chapter very easily. So read the chapter thoroughly. Earlier also I had shared the video for the explanation of this chapter. You can refer that video also. So dear students, this here chapter 2 is complete. Thank you.